Look, I
DeRosa?
think at the end of the day, this is about a campaign. This is about winning. And if I were advising her, I would say go with Josh Shapiro. It's 20 electoral votes. It is somebody who, appeals to the center for a lot of different reasons. She doesn't have the best track record on Israel. I know a lot of Jewish Democrats who are unhappy with some of the positions she's taken in the last several months. And so I think adding a Jewish voice to the ticket would be beneficial for her in helping to shore up that critical part of the base and heal a little bit of the divide within the party there. And again, this just comes down to math. So that's what I would do if I were her. And again, a lot of times VP picks are irrelevant, but for her, I think it could go a long way in reaching the middle and helping to bring this thing home.
It is, of course, the first week since Kamala Harris was endorsed by Joe Biden. She's raised $200 million in donations for her campaign. It's been an extraordinary week for her. It's expected that she'll reveal her running mate in the contest in the next week. Meanwhile, JD Vance has come under more scrutiny in resurfaced emails from between 2014 and 2017, where he calls Trump morally reprehensible. Kamala Harris has had a pretty spectacular week, certainly beyond what many of us were predicting. Her favourability is up 8 points by some of the latest polls that I'm seeing. That must have taken the Trump campaign back a little.
Well, it's a different race. I mean, they had planned to run against Joe Biden, who was fading quickly. And now they're running against someone who is experiencing some amount of base consolidation. There were a lot of depressed Democrats out there who were more excited about Harris than they had grown to become about Joe Biden. But I think in the national surveys, which, I'm giving another week or two, I think it's difficult to poll during massive news upheaval. You still see Trump basically in the same position he was with a really good chance to win. The Democrats also have a good chance to win. And I think for Harris, she's not yet experienced what the Trump campaign is going to do to define her over the next couple of weeks. And I expect you'll see that starting, pretty soon.
I mean, his favorability rate numbers, Donald Trump, are going southwards, whereas Harris is, of course, on the ascendancy, and that has to be concerning. Before I come to you, Melissa, one more for you, Scott, and what you make of the kind of attack lines that Donald Trump is coming out with at the moment, aimed towards Kamala Harris, and really whether he's missing a trick, in your opinion. How should he be conducting his rallies? What kind of attack lines should he be using? Is he missing a trick here, do you think?
Well, the correct framing for the definition of Harris is very simple. She was an extremely liberal United States senator. She was a very liberal candidate for president back in 2019, and her record as vice president is one of aiding and abetting Joe Biden, who has a 35% approval rating. So if you look at it from that perspective, 2/3 of the country is unhappy with the results of the Biden-Harris administration. She's been there every step of the way. So if I were Donald Trump, I would just focus on her own record and her own statements, and Kamala Harris in her own words. There's plenty of material there to win a race on that.
Melissa DeRosa, let's come to you. Kamala Harris doing very well. She's raised an awful lot of money over the last week. It has to be said, beyond expectation. I was reading about a campaign event she did at the weekend where she pulled in more than $1.4 million alone, triple what the organisers' original goal was. And she's supported with performances by Yo-Yo Ma, by James Taylor. So she's got that down. She has, she's a California Democrat. She'll appeal to the liberals across the states. And that is her main issue, I think, isn't it? Is that she's not perhaps found out how to tap into those undecided voters, those who may lend their vote to Republican or to Democrat, depending on sort of how they're feeling they're doing in life, how much money they've got in the bank, how they feel about the public services around them. That is one part of the electorate that arguably she still has to do some work on.
Well, look, still, she just became the nominee, or she's the presumptive nominee just a couple of days ago. So I think we really don't know what the contours of this race are yet. She is experiencing a boomlet. I would caution any Democrats who are overly optimistic in this moment. I agree that it's too soon to tell And when you consider the last month and a half, the twists and turns of this election, God only knows what we have in store. But, Kamala Harris is a California Democrat, and certain people associate that with certain things. But, I think you're going to see her reach into the part of her background where she was a district attorney, where she was a prosecutor, where she was someone who went after rapists and she went after murderers. She tried 3 strikes and you're out laws while she was there. She's not a traditional far left Democrat, although during her primary for president 4 years ago, she certainly made a lot of changes to herself and has a lot of sound bites that would be very easy to grab in order to make her look more liberal than I think she is at her core. And so I think, she's just out of the gate. She has raised a tremendous amount of money. She's done something that, Democrats really didn't feel was possible at this stage in the game, which is excited the base. The base was not at all excited. She's unified the party in an incredibly short amount of time. And now the question is, how does her VP pick go over? And what do the next, couple of months look like once we get past Labor Day? And she does have to own some of the baggage from the Biden White House, which did, create the situation where Democrats were on track to lose.
She's got to make that VP pick, of course, and she's going to have to be incredibly careful about it. It feels like it's going pretty well for her, but we're only a week in, and her VP pick could swing it the other way, the wrong way for Kamala Harris. You've got people like Senator Mark Kelly, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Who should she go for? I mean, it's going to be a tactical pick, I think, isn't it? Melissa?
Look, I think at the end of the day, this is about a campaign. This is about winning. And if I were advising her, I would say go with Josh Shapiro. It's 20 electoral votes. It is somebody who, appeals to the center for a lot of different reasons. She doesn't have the best track record on Israel. I know a lot of Jewish Democrats who are unhappy with some of the positions she's taken in the last several months. And so I think adding a Jewish voice to the ticket would be beneficial for her in helping to shore up that critical part of the base and heal a little bit of the divide within the party there. And again, this just comes down to math. So that's what I would do if I were her. And again, a lot of times VP picks are irrelevant, but for her, I think it could go a long way in reaching the middle and helping to bring this thing home.
Scott, back to you finally. Is JD Vance turning into a bit of a liability for Donald Trump? There's been some emails that have come to light today, albeit from a period we know that JD Vance was not a fan of Donald Trump. He calls him morally reprehensible in those old emails. He's clunked on a couple of things so far. He's more extreme in some of his views than Donald Trump. And I wonder whether he is turning into a bit of a liability.
I don't know. I'm one that doesn't think these picks matter all that much. JD Vance, I don't think is going to make Trump any better or any worse for most voters. I think in Harris's case, maybe it helps her on the margins, but most people go to the polls to vote for the top of the ticket, not the vice president. And I think, look, the idea that JD Vance was ever going to outshine Donald Trump or somehow,
but he is there to compliment him, not to bring his campaign down, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm count me dubious that if you already hated Donald Trump, you probably hate JD Vance. And Donald Trump's the most well-defined politician in the United States. And the idea that JD Vance is going to make you love him or hate him any more than you already did, I'm extremely skeptical of.
Look, I'll leave it there. Thank you to both of you for your wisdom. Always good to check in with you. Thank you so much, Melissa DeRosa, Democratic strategist, and Scott Jennings, former campaign advisor to President Bush.